Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're focusing on just one source, but it's a really powerful one, an incredibly personal account of a near-death experience.
Yes, we're looking at case file Dane NDE 9719. It's from 1981 following a really serious car accident.
And we want to pull out the key details, some surprising ones actually from this report.
Absolutely. What makes this account, particularly interesting, I think, is it details this very clear boundary moment. He couldn't cross over.
Right.
And maybe even more striking, there's a profound life transformation, but it took a very, very long time to actually manifest, almost 2 decades.
That delay is fascinating. We'll definitely get into that.
Yeah, our goal here is really to analyze the sensory stuff, the emotional shifts he describes, and then unpack that huge gap between the experience and the change in his beliefs.
Okay, so context first. It's a male participant, 1981, severe car accident, life-threatening, but maybe not clinical death in the strictest sense. He was in a coma, though.
Right, 4 days in a coma. But his experience seems to have started almost immediately, right in that initial trauma period.
And where does it start? What's the first thing he describes?
He says he was initially in a dark area, like in a room. Pretty common starting point for some NDEs.
Like when the light comes in.
Instantly. His focus goes straight to this light, which he sees coming from around the door.
And he really emphasizes the power of this light, doesn't he? It wasn't just, a lamp turning on.
No, not at all. He uses this phrase, "it could not be stopped or contained." It gives you this sense of something overwhelming, something beyond normal physics.
Like a fundamental reality breaking through.
Exactly. And when he goes through that door, the contrast is stark. He leaves the dark room behind.
And enters.
What he calls a tunnel, but then clarifies it was more like a long, bright, clean corridor. Very specific description.
Okay, a bright, clean corridor. And what's really interesting is his state of mind in that corridor.
Yes, this is key. He reported feeling more conscious, more alert than his normal everyday awareness. Not groggy or confused, despite the, massive head trauma he'd suffered.
More alert than normal. That really challenges the idea that consciousness is purely a product of a functioning brain, doesn't it? His brain was severely injured.
It does. It suggests consciousness might operate, differently, perhaps independently in these states. His mind felt enhanced, not diminished.
And the feelings matched that enhanced state.
Completely. He stresses this. The only emotions in the corridor were intense love, incredible peace, and incredible joy. Nothing negative.
He said no pain, no pressures, and no sadness.
Right. And also that he felt no longer in conflict with nature. That's a profound statement. It's not just feeling good, it's feeling integrated, whole.
Like a state of perfect harmony, maybe?
Something like that. But then there's the communication aspect, which adds another layer of, uniqueness.
Ah, yes. This part is fascinating. How did he perceive information?
He explicitly says he felt thoughts without hearing anything.
Felt thoughts. Wow.
Yeah. He knew things like, he knew this corridor was leading towards heaven, but there were no words, no voices, not even a sense of sound, just direct knowing.
Imagine that. Knowledge transferred instantly, conceptually, without language getting in the way.
Yeah.
It makes our way of communicating feel so clumsy.
It really does. It suggests a kind of efficiency of understanding we can barely imagine. He didn't need to be told. He just knew.
And this knowing carried him down the corridor.
Right to the end, to the destination point.
Which brings us to the next key part. The door, the barrier, and the return. What did he see at the end of this corridor?
A white door.
Mm-hmm.
And he describes it very clearly. Very beautiful, not ornate, but clean. Simple, yet profound.
And there was one specific detail he focused on.
The doorknob. He said it had a very beautiful gold knob. And he just stared at it, he estimates, for several minutes, knowing what was on the other side.
Heaven, she believed.
Yes, he knew heaven was beyond that door, and he desperately wanted to go through.
Yeah.
But he also knew, with the same certainty, that he couldn't. He couldn't open the door.
So the knob he was staring at, this beautiful gold knob, became this symbol of impossibility.
Exactly. A barrier. He says he was not permitted to cross, or perhaps he was sent back against my will. It wasn't his choice to turn back.
That's different from many accounts where people feel they choose to return or are asked. Here, it feels like a hard stop, a rule.
A very clear, non-negotiable boundary. The desire was there, overwhelmingly so, but the permission wasn't. The gold knob stayed out of reach.
So what happened then? He just accepted it.
Seems so. The moment he understood he had to go back, he turned around, went back through the original door he'd come through initially.
The one where the light couldn't be contained.
Right. He went back through that door, shut it behind him, and that's the absolute last thing he remembers before waking up.
Waking up where?
In the hospital. In the ICU. He found out later he'd been in that coma for 4 days.
And the memory of the corridor, the door, the knob, was it dreamlike?
Not at all. He was emphatic about this. It felt definitely real. Much more real, in fact, than his memories of the days or even weeks surrounding the accident itself. Those were hazy, but the NDE was crystal clear.
Okay, so he wakes up with this incredibly vivid, undeniable experience of a spiritual reality. But what was his belief system before the accident?
That's where it gets really interesting for the analysis. He described himself as secular, unaffiliated. He, knew of God but wasn't religious, wasn't a born-again Christian, as he put it.
So the content of the NDE.
Was, in his words, entirely not consistent with his beliefs at the time. He experienced something that his existing framework couldn't really account for.
That must create some serious cognitive dissonance. You have this absolute knowing from the experience colliding with your lifelong assumptions.
Absolutely catastrophic, you'd think.
Yeah.
It proves your fundamental understanding of reality wrong. That's often a huge struggle for experiencers integrating this new, massive truth.
Which leads us perfectly into part 3, the aftermath and that delayed transformation. This 18-year gap is just remarkable.
It really is the standout feature of this account, analytically speaking. Let's lay it out again. The accident in NDE happened in 1981. He knew from that moment about God, heaven, this overwhelming love.
Undeniable proof, experienced firsthand.
Right. Yet he didn't formally accept Christ, didn't take those steps into faith until June 1999.
18 years later, if you know heaven is real, why the wait? What was happening in those 18 years?
Well, his later explanation is theological, about God's patience, but psychologically, you could see it as a kind of cognitive inertia. His established, secular way of understanding the world was incredibly powerful, incredibly ingrained.
Like a default setting that's hard to override.
Exactly. The NDE gave him the reality of the spiritual realm, the love, the destination.
Yeah.
But it didn't automatically provide how the framework, the belief system, the path to engage with that reality within his daily life.
So the knowledge was instant, but building the bridge between that knowledge and his existing life took nearly 2 decades.
Precisely. The transcendent insight hit him like lightning, but integrating it, rewiring his whole operating system, that was a slow, probably difficult internal process. He knew the truth, but maybe didn't know what to do with it, how to live it, within the context he knew.
It suggests that even absolute proof might not be enough to instantly overcome a lifetime of different assumptions and habits.
It seems so. The mind holds onto its structures very tightly. It took something specific to finally connect the dots for him to build that bridge.
And what was that catalyst? What happened in 1999?
It was reading a specific Bible verse, years after the NDE, but after he had started exploring faith more actively. He read Matthew 7:8,
Which says,
"Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you."
knock and the door will be open. The door, the gold knob.
Bingo. It clicked instantly. He said reading that verse finally made him understand why he couldn't open the beautiful door back in 1981. Because in his new understanding, he had not knocked. He hadn't asked God for forgiveness through Jesus Christ. The theology finally provided the missing piece, the interpretation key for his personal experience.
So the NDE gave the raw, undeniable data, and Scripture, 18 years later, provided the framework to understand the meaning of that data, especially the barrier.
That seems to be how he processed it. The integration wasn't just knowing heaven was real, it was understanding the perceived conditions for entry, according to the belief system he eventually adopted.
And once that integration happened, did it lead to real changes?
Oh, absolutely. He reports major life changes, especially in how he relates to people. Forgiveness became central. He says, "I forgive because I've been forgiven." That's a fundamental shift in orientation.
And the memory itself, still strong.
He says he remembers the NDE, that corridor and that gold knob, more accurately, more vividly than other things that happened around that same time. The trauma details might fade, but the transcendent moment, the boundary, that remains sharp.
So looking at this whole account, Dane L. NDE 9719, it's not just about seeing a light. It's a story about boundaries, about delayed understanding, and about how profound experiences sometimes take years to fully integrate.
Exactly. The coma was 4 days, but the real integration journey took 18 years. The gold knob was a physical barrier in the experience, but maybe it also represented a psychological or spiritual barrier that took him almost 2 decades to understand how to knock on.
The experience gave him the knowledge, the destination almost instantly.
Yes, the reality of that spiritual dimension, the love that was immediate confirmation. But applying that knowledge, translating it into changed values, forgiveness, daily actions, that was the long game.
Yeah.
It shows that seeing isn't always immediately believing in a way that changes everything.
Right. Receiving the proof is one step. Living according to that proof, that can be a much longer, more complex journey.
Absolutely. It suggests the immediate shock of the transcendent might hit you. But the slow, deliberate work of faith and integration can take time, sometimes a lot of time.
It really makes you think. We've seen here how this NDE gave him undeniable knowledge of God's love, of heaven's reality. So here's something for you, the listener, to consider. If you were presented with a truth that profound, something you knew was real, how long do you think it might take for that truth to fundamentally change how you live day to day, your actions, your values?
Yeah, it's a challenging question, something to mull over.
Definitely something to think about. We'll leave it there for this deep dive.
Thank you for listening to Borrowed Time NDE Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss a moment of inspiration. Until next time, wishing you an extraordinary and truly wonderful time on your journey through life.